Hi, I'm in my childhood bedroom, so I decided I would share a photo of myself from the 8th grade. Not me just looking in this yearbook and seeing that I have a heart written around one of the boys that I had a crush on at the time. I did not know that that was going to be something that I reflected on today. But 8th grade Beth, okay, there I am. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. My name is Beth, if you are new here, and I like to talk about music. So I know I've done a couple different videos talking about my 2022 listening and listening to your favorite songs from the year, but I also really wanted to make this video where I reflect on every single album that I listened to in 2022 and tier rank them. This is going to be a little bit different than my regular content. Obviously, I'm also at my childhood home, so this is a different location. Everything's just a little bit different. Tonight, you will be finding out what my favorite songs from all of these albums are. You will be finding out what songs I would skip from each album, and you will also be finding out my honest opinions and relationships to all of these albums. Obviously, after you listen to an album one time, you don't know fully how you feel about that album, at least for me. My opinions on albums are constantly changing. I feel like sometimes I'll really love an album the first time I listen to it, and then it won't have as much replay value for me. And then sometimes the opposite is the case, where I don't really connect to an album on first listen, but I go back and it turns out to end up being an album that I love. Some of my opinions may have changed, some of my opinions may be the same. Some of these albums I wasn't even entirely sure how I felt about them at first, and now I feel like I have a much better idea of my relationship to them. I did want to make a few disclaimers before we get into the video. First of all, obviously all of the opinions in this video are my own, and you do not have to agree with any of them. And I think that's what makes music so fun, is we all have songs and albums that we connect to more than others, and that doesn't mean that anyone has a wrong opinion. Also, none of these opinions of mine are set in stone. This is just how I'm feeling right now at the beginning of 2023. And lastly, I have a respect for every single artist that I will be talking about in this video. So if you're expecting this to be like me dumping on any particular artist or album, that's not going to happen. Even if their album wasn't my favorite album from them, or my favorite album in general, it does not change the fact that I have respect for the artist, and like that's that. I also wanted to explain the tiers, because if I don't explain them, they're probably not going to make that much sense. So haven't returned to, I want to stress that this is not really a low tier so much as I haven't listened again to the album after filming my reaction. Maybe I've gone back to a couple songs. Now, that is not to say that it is a bad album. That is not to say that I will never listen to the album. The second highest tier is Emotional Blender, which is actually a reference to a 5 Seconds of Summer song called Blender. This one, again, it's not necessarily a low tier. It's more so just that I have mixed feelings on the album. So that could be that I love half of the album and don't love the other half of the album. That could be that I like the album, but at the same time I haven't gone back to it and I just feel kind of conflicted with my emotions. Does not mean it's an album that I don't like. It just means that I have all these conflicting emotions. Emotional Blender. The middle tier I titled Vanilla Ice Cream, because vanilla ice cream is a dessert that I really enjoy when I'm eating it. But when it is compared and put against other desserts, I'm going to choose the other desserts. So this will be albums that I enjoy when I'm listening to them, that I do like and think are good albums. So the way I think of the top two tiers is that they're the same quality level, they just have different meanings. So Van Gogh is Quaking, that's more for the albums that I see as masterpieces, as art pieces, albums that I really love. I will be making these albums, my personality is going to be more of the replay value albums. The albums that I went back to time and time again and felt like they were really becoming a part of my DNA. I hope that all makes sense. And then another number you will see next to some of the albums is going to be, if it was in like the top 50 most listened to albums of the year for me, I will put that number there. So if it says it's number 27, that means that it was my 27th most listened to album of the year. Let's get into it. Just remember that I'm sensitive, and if you get mad at me in the comment section, it'll hurt my feelings. So the website that I'm using to do this is called Tiermaker. This is not sponsored, but it is a really cool website where you can just like rank anything you want. You make your own tiers. So I'm going to be starting with Super Ache by Conan Gray. I wanted to start on a high note and one that really has impacted my 2022 listening. And so I will be putting this into the highest tier. Even past the point where it was this new, fresh album, I've gone back to this album a lot. This has actually turned into a no-skip album for me, which is kind of crazy because the first time I listened to it, I did not like Footnote very much. But that album has done a total 180 in my life, and I actually love that song now. Yours is the song that I go back to as probably my number one favorite on the album now. I just think that is one of the most stunning ballads I've ever heard. I've gone back and forth as to whether I like it more than Kid Crow. And at this point in time, I think I do like it more than Kid Crow. Kid Crow is an amazing first album from him, but this one is just so much more mature, I think, in the songwriting. Like, Best Friend is one of the boppiest bops I can think of. Movies and The Exit have both grown on me so much. I love both of those songs now. I actually had tickets to see Conan Gray live, too. And unfortunately, my friend had to get married. I'm sad that I couldn't go, but yeah, I have so much love for Conan Gray. If you haven't listened to his music, I could not recommend it more. Dance Fever by Florence and the Machine. This is definitely one that I wanted to update my feelings on because I'm gonna go ahead and put this into Van Gogh is Quaking. Again, same quality level as the first tier. I love this album now. It's crazy because the first time I listened to it, I feel like I didn't fully grasp the album. It's about how Florence couldn't perform during the pandemic and how that really messed with her because she loves performing. And I think it is such an art piece of an album. It is like a concept album almost. Even the songs that I didn't like at first have grown on me, and I listened to it a couple weeks ago and I was like, this is a no-skip album for me. It is also by far my favorite Florence and the Machine album. Also the visuals in that album. I haven't watched the music videos, I know, but I love the album cover and all the pictures that went along with the album. It just feels like such a work of art. Renaissance by Beyonce. This is also going straight into Van Gogh is Quaking. The 180 that this album has done in my life. If you saw my videos on this album, you will know the first time I listened to it, I just did not know what to think. And now that I've had more time with it, I think it is such a masterpiece and I love it. And when it comes on, I cannot stop listening to it. Like, once I start listening to that album, I will be listening to the entirety of the album, besides the 2 songs that I skip, in one sitting. And ironically, I do think it might be one of my favorite Beyonce albums now, which I can't believe that I'm even saying, because at first I was so certain that it was my least favorite album from her. I can definitely say that it's not an album that's for everyone in terms of the sound. I mean, there is just so much going on, and I can definitely understand if people don't connect to it. I'm surprised to say that I do now. Next up, we have Crash by Charli XCX. This album is the first album from Charli XCX that I ever listened to in its entirety, and I was blown away. It is definitely my favorite album from Charli XCX. I think it is such a strong album. It is going into Van Gogh is Quaking. I think I do lean toward her poppier sound. Obviously, in some albums, she has a very electronic element that I've sort of realized I really have to be in a specific mood for. It's not necessarily that I even dislike it, but I just really have to be in a very specific mood for it. Crash is an album that I feel like I could always be in the mood for. It is so poppy, it is so fun, but the lyrics are kind of, like, the lyrics cut you when you listen to it. So it's just this wild ride of, like, being emotionally damaged while you bop. Also, shout out to Charli XCX for reposting a meme of me. I have not forgotten about that, and that was a highlight from my 2022. The next album is gonna get me in a little bit of trouble, but it is The Loneliest Time by Carly Rae Jepsen. This is not my favorite album from Carly. I still like it. And some of the songs that I didn't connect with at first have definitely grown on me, like The Loneliest Time, Shooting Star. I really love those songs now. Overall, I think it's a fun California bop There's a few songs that I don't vibe with, but I definitely like it a lot more than I did upon first listen. I still very much have mixed feelings on it, and for that reason, I will be putting it in emotional blender. I would say I love half of the album, and then the other half of the album, maybe a little less than half, I would say is just not my cup of tea. So that's kind of why I put it in emotional blender, is not to say that I don't like it. It's just to say that I have conflicting emotions on that album. No pun intended. Yeah, I have so much respect for Carly and so much love for, I think she's the queen of bops. I think she is so talented. Baby One More Time by Britney Spears. This is not an album that I have personally returned to. Yeah, I just don't really vibe with it. I think it's a cute album for its time. I think if I had grown up with the album, I would probably have a different relationship with it. But because I didn't grow up with it, I don't have any of that nostalgia or emotional attachment to it. I still love the songs sometimes. Baby One More Time. There's another one that I really liked. Art Pop by Lady Gaga. I have like a guilty pleasure for this album. It is going to go into the top tier. I feel like I did make this album my personality a little bit. I love this album. Do I think it's her best album ever? Probably not. But it doesn't really matter because I love it. So I think like Venus is one of my favorite songs by her, and the album opens in such a crazy way. Don't get me started on Swine. This album is just a crazy, wild adventure. I will never forget the experience of listening to it for the first time. It is one of my favorite videos I've ever filmed. The most fun I've had filming, the most fun I've had editing. Circus by Britney Spears. I love this album. I was so wowed by this album because I feel like not as many people talk about this album as In the Zone and Blackout. This was a sleeper for a lot of people. I don't know, I'm conflicted where to put it. I'm between the top two tiers. Again, I'm really trying to keep the top tier for the albums that I went back to the most this year and that I just like developed a total emotional attachment to. So I think that I'm gonna put this in Van Gogh is Quaking. I think it's just bop after bop. There's also some gorgeous little ballads on there. It's not a very cohesive album, so it's one of those albums that you have to be in the mood for something that's going to take you in a lot of different directions. A lot of you guys pointed out that it is called Circus, and that could be why she made it such a not cohesive album, is because she wanted it to feel like a circus. And if that was the case, if that's what she did, that is absolutely genius. I would have even more respect for Britney if that's the case. Love Sucks by Avril Lavigne. So I really have to be in the mood for this album because I do love it. When I'm in the mood for it, it's like everything to me. But I feel like I have to be in such a specific kind of angry, emo, angsty mood to listen to it that I don't know that I can put it at the level of Van Gogh is Quaking, which pains me greatly because I actually do kind of want to put it there, but I also can't put everything there. So I think I'm going to put it in Vanilla Ice Cream. But don't get me wrong, like Avalanche had me crying this year. I cried listening to that song because there's just something about it that really gets me. And then I love Bite Me. It's such a fun album. The Gods We Can Touch by Aurora. I feel like I still say her name weird. Aurora. I absolutely love this album. If you've been here for longer than 10 minutes, you probably know. It might be one of my favorite albums ever. I don't know. It's just, it really did me in this year. I bought the vinyl of this album, so that's obviously saying a lot because I don't buy albums on vinyl very often because they're expensive. But obviously it will be going into the highest tier. Yeah, if you've been here for a while, you know. Collection 1 by Ali X. I love this album, y'all. This album has grown to be a no-skip album for me. It is one that I've gone back to a lot. When I'm in the mood for that bright, poppy sound, I run to this album. I have to put it in the top tier because at one point I was like, this could be one of the best albums I've ever heard. I definitely want to explore more from Ali X. It's just a matter of I can't do everything all at once. But I'm so down to listen to more from her because I'm wowed by that project and wowed by her artistry already. And you guys say that she gets better with every album, which just concerns me because I don't know how you're going to do better than that album. I really don't. The next two albums are also going into the highest tier. Let Go by Avril Lavigne and Glory by Britney Spears. I don't even have words. This album is everything. The way that I listen to this album is I listen to it all at once. I listen to it in order every time I listen to it. The way that it flows so seamlessly between the songs. There's just no moment where it lulls, really. I mean, there's some songs that maybe I like better than others, but it is such a, I don't know, it's such a perfect album in my eyes. I'm going to say the same thing that I said for Ally, which is that I really hope to discover more with Avril because that album blew me away. I never expected it to take me out like it did. And it's almost like I don't register what's going on in the music. It's just like I let it wash over me. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone else, but if you get it, you get it. Glory by Britney Spears is another one that just blew me out of the water. I do think it's one of my favorite Britney albums, and I do think it's, for me, one of her best. Confessions on a Dance Floor by Madonna. So I really enjoyed this album the first time I listened to it. It's a disco bop. It has such a specific feel to it, a specific vibe. I think because the feeling of it is so specific, I have not personally returned to this album. I tried to, and I just couldn't get into it. It's such a specific feeling of being in a disco nightclub. And if you're not in the mood to be at a disco nightclub, it can feel like just the wrong time. So that's why I haven't returned to it, but I still think it's a really cool, fun album. I still have respect for it. B-Day by Beyonce. I will be putting this right into the highest tier. I'm gonna be honest, Beyonce is an artist that is gonna have most all of her albums in the top 2 tiers. Yeah, that album is one of my favorite Beyonce albums, if not my number 1 favorite. It's definitely the Beyonce album I went back to most this year, and it's just everything. I bought it on vinyl, so. Dirt Femme by Tovlo. So I really like this album. I don't think I can put it in Van Gogh is Quaking. It just feels wrong in my heart to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in Vanilla Ice Cream. I think it's a really cool album. I think she does really cool things with her production. Her sound is very unique. I just haven't really found it has as much replay value for me as some of the other albums from this year. I have gone back and listened to it, but just not as much as some of the other albums. The Fame by Lady Gaga. I love this album. It instantly feels like such a classic album. I'm torn between putting it in the top 2 tiers. I haven't listened to it in a while, so that's why I'm debating. I feel like I am gonna put it in the 2nd tier for right now. I don't know. That just is what feels right to me. I think because I haven't listened to it in so long, I think it is an instant classic. So much timelessness in it. I mean, obviously, again, like the top 2 tiers are the same quality level. Faith in the Future by Louis Tomlinson. I think this is the album that blew me away the most this year. I was not expecting to be as obsessed with it as I am, but it is probably one of my favorite albums from the year. It will be going straight into the top tier. I think I was so blown away because his first album, I liked it, but it was by no means like my favorite album of all time. But this one, it just feels so much more mature and up a level in every way. And I just think he has outdone himself as an artist. I think he's totally found his sound. Some of the songs had to grow on me, and I still have a couple skips. But overall, as an entire album, I'm just obsessed with it so much. And I think everyone should go listen to it. It's similar to Let Go for me in that I put it on and it just feels like such a solid album. I put it on and it feels like a capital A album. It is one of the most solid albums I've heard this year. 4 by Beyonce. So I like this album. I think it is a really, really gorgeous album. However, it is one of my least favorite from Beyonce, personally. I'm going to go ahead and put it in Vanilla Ice Cream. It's kind of the definition of this category because when I listen to it, I really enjoy it. I just don't find that it has as much replay value for me as her other albums. Sad Songs in a Hotel Room by Joshua Bassett. This is technically an EP, but I included it nonetheless. And I really love this album, this EP. I think my favorites have changed a lot. I think Lifeline and LA are my favorites now. I was originally obsessed with All in Due Time, and unfortunately, that is probably one of my least favorites on the EP now. I still will listen to it and I still enjoy it, but I don't know what happened, but it just is not at the top for me anymore. I'm gonna put it in Vanilla Ice Cream. The Hardest Part by Noah Cyrus. This album wowed me as well because I didn't know that much of Noah's music before listening to it, but I just think it's so stunning. I listened to it so much when it came out. I had it on a loop. I thought that it was one of my favorite albums from the year. It's so beautifully sad. It's heartbreaking. It's gorgeous. It's stunning. It's depressing all at the same time. And I kind of live for that sometimes. I just need a minute. This is exhausting. Ceremonials by Florence and the Machine. So this is one of my least favorite from Florence. I don't think it's bad. I actually genuinely do think it's a really good album in terms of it creates such an atmosphere. It's such a dark, haunting kind of vibe. And I think she really created the atmosphere so well. It's just not really my sound. So I'm going to put it in Haven't Returned To. I actually did return to it one random day. I listened to it and I actually really enjoyed it. But as far as like replay value, it's just not really there for me. Minor by Gracie Abrams. I love Gracie Abrams so much. Gracie's music has so much replay value for me. I feel like I can almost always be in the mood for it, even though it is a bit sad sometimes. I just think, I don't know, everything she does is just so beautiful to me. So I will probably put both of her albums in the top tier because I feel like I've made Gracie Abrams my personality this year. I feel like in my personal heart, I've decided that she takes up a lot of it. Her discography is flawless to me, and I also think that she's the type of artist that I can listen to at any time. Muna by Muna. So I feel like this is gonna go in the second tier because this album is so fun. It is so catchy. It is such a cool sound to it. And I just feel like they killed it with this and they definitely deserve more recognition. I love the collab with Phoebe Bridgers. I don't know. I feel like I haven't gone back to it in a minute, but whenever I do return to it, I really love it. Muna is actually also one of the openers for the Eras tour that I got tickets for. So I'm really excited to see them live because I feel like this album will be so fun to hear live. Hold the Girl by Rina Sawayama. This was kind of made for the second tier because I feel like this album is a masterpiece. There are still a few songs on it that I don't listen to, but overall, I love this album. It is my favorite album from Rina Sawayama by a landslide. I feel like that could change with time, but it's so stratospheric. It is just soaring above the clouds. And while I haven't gone back to it as much as some other albums from this year, I feel like every time I listen to it, I have so much appreciation for it. Born Pink by Blackpink. So I love Blackpink, as you all know. So it's gonna be really hard to not just put everything by them in the top tier. And to be honest, I probably am going to put everything by them in the top tier. And I'm not sorry about it. I was really trying to limit myself, but I'm already on the second row of albums in the top tier. And while we're there, we might as well just put Lemonade in there. This is another example of, I feel like I've made Blackpink my personality this year. And their entire discography is pretty flawless to me, so I'm just gonna put it all in there. I feel like Born Pink, I haven't gone back to it as much as the album, but I feel like it is a more mature album. When I listen to it, the production and the sound stand out more than on the album for me. But the album has more replay value, at least right now. So I don't know. I like both. I love both. I don't know which I would put in front of the other. Lemonade by Beyonce. I mean, need I say more? It's funny because I knew that I liked that album the first time I listened to it, but it has grown on me to the point that it is probably one of my favorite albums by her. I mean, it's definitely one of my favorite albums by her. It's another one of those albums that I put it on and it just feels so solid. It just flows so well and everything about it is just perfect in my eyes. Surrender by Maggie Rogers. So I'm gonna put this one in Emotional Blender because I love Maggie. I really, really loved Heard It in a Past Life. And I do feel like I had very high expectations after that album. I'm conflicted because I do really enjoy this album and I've gone back to it. And I feel like every time I listen to it, I like it more. But there's just a few songs on the album, like the last few songs really fall flat for me. Yeah, I'm conflicted because it's not getting to the place that I need it to get to. But I have so much respect for Maggie. The Family Jewels by Marina. This is a throwback. I don't know, I'm conflicted because I love some songs on this album so much. And then there's a few that I'm not as into. But I think I'm going to put it in Vanilla Ice Cream. There's just a few like Rootless and Outsider that I don't like, but I love Marina and I still love that album. Chromatica by Lady Gaga. So I haven't really returned to this album. Now, don't get me wrong, I went to the Chromatica ball and I had the time of my life. I loved that concert. I sang all the songs, even though it's not my favorite album. I feel like you can enjoy the concert, you can enjoy the artist separate from an album that may not be your favorite. And the Chromatica ball was next level. It was my favorite concert that I went to this year out of the 3 that I went to. I still have respect for that album because Lady Gaga made a whole world and she created this whole sort of escape realm. So I have respect for what she was trying to do. I just think if she had fleshed it out a little bit more and it had been like more time had been taken to work on it, I think it could be better. Electra Heart by Marina, without a doubt going in the highest of tiers. This is my favorite album from Marina, which I feel like is a little surprising because it is so electro-pop. But I can't get over like Bubblegum Bitch, Lies, Starring Role, and Teen Idol. Those 4 songs trump anything else I've ever heard on the planet. Midnights by Taylor Swift. I'm not really gonna beat a dead horse. I've talked a lot about my love for this album on my channel, so I'm just gonna go ahead and put it right there. Yeah. Banish the Banshee by Isaac Dunbar. So this is an album that I did react to, but I just didn't have a chance to edit it. But I really like this album. I think it's a really cool, a little bit different for Isaac. If you know his music, he's so talented. If you have not checked out his music, I would definitely recommend it because I don't think he misses. I think all of his albums are really standouts in their own way. And this was a really cool, like almost concept album. I don't know. Sunburn is probably one of my favorite songs I've heard this year. I cannot get over that he started the album with that song. Just the start of it is one of my favorite starts of any song I've ever heard. I'm gonna put this in Vanilla Ice Cream because while I do think it's kind of a masterpiece, low-key, there's some songs on it that I vibe with more than others. And it's such a short album that I feel like to have any songs that I don't vibe with, I don't know, I just can't put it any higher than that. Freya Writings by Freya Writings. This is a throwback, but unfortunately I have not returned to this album. I still have respect for it, and I think she has a gorgeous voice and some really cool production, but All My Demons Greeting Me as a Friend by Aurora. I'm gonna put this in Van Gogh is Quaking. Need I say more? I love it. There's so many good songs on that album that feel so timeless to me, like Through the Eyes of a Child is probably one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard. And I just have so much love for Aurora. How I'm Feeling Now by Charlie XCX. Definitely emotional blender for this one. There are some songs on it that I really like. Anthems, Enemy, Detonate. But I would say that I really have to be in such a specific mood for those songs that it does not have the replay value that I need it to have for me. I thought I liked it when I first listened to it, but there's some songs that I just never go back to and they've kind of made their way out of my library. Okay, so I'm gonna do Infections of a Different Kind and Different Kind of Human at once. To be honest, for the life of me, I cannot remember which album cover is which. I'm trying to put Infections of a Different Kind, I think in Vanilla Ice Cream, but then A Different Kind of Human, I want to put that in Van Gogh is Quaking. So I'm hoping I'm doing this right, but honestly, I don't know. Infections of a Different Kind has actually probably become my least favorite album from her. Don't get me wrong, I love every single Aurora album, and nearly every single song from her is a song that I have love for. It's just that something has to be last. Ancient Dreams in a Modern Land by Marina is another one that's gonna go straight into the top tier. I legitimately cried real tears thinking about how good this album is. I mean, it was months ago, but I was sitting there like, how is this album even real? At some point I started crying. I don't know when that happened. I just think this is such a solid album. 10 songs is all it needs to make its point. It's one of my favorite Marina albums. Joanne by Lady Gaga. I love this album. It's not my favorite album from her. I don't even know what my favorite album from her is anymore. I'm gonna put it in Vanilla Ice Cream. It's a little bit all over the place, and because of that, I can't put it any higher than that, but I definitely have so much respect for what Lady Gaga did with that album. It's such a raw album. It's so different from all her other albums. It's really cool that she did that. She just made the album that she wanted to make. She didn't care what anyone else thought, and I have so much respect for that. Puberty 2 by Mitski. I really like this album. I would say I haven't listened to it in a minute because I just have not been in the mood to listen to Mitski. Her music for me, I have to be in a super, super specific mood to listen to it. So that's why I'm probably going to put this in Vanilla Ice Cream because I just haven't gone back to it as much as some of the other albums I've heard this year. But I still really like it when I listen to it. Being Funny in a Foreign Language by the 1975. So the 1975 is one of my favorite bands, but when I first heard this album, I wasn't sure how much I connected with the sound of it. However, I will say that after I've listened more, I love it when I listen to it. The problem is I never feel the pull to go listen to it. It's the Vanilla Ice Cream thing. Rina by Rina Sawayama. I'm gonna put this in Vanilla Ice Cream. Christmas and Chill by Ariana Grande. I'm low-key going to put this in the top tier because this album, I don't know, it's like probably one of my favorite Christmas albums now. Ever since I listened to it in the days after I filmed that video, it was all that I was listening to. And I can see it being one of the Christmas albums that I go back to the most. And one of the only Christmas albums that I go back to. Because I do not really listen to Christmas music. I'm very, very picky about my Christmas music. And so the fact that I love that album as much as I do is really saying something. I haven't returned to Dawn FM, but I think there are some songs on that album that I love, like Less Than Zero. I love that song so much. There's a couple other ones, but overall as an entire album, I've not gone back to it as much. Emails I Can't Send by Sabrina Carpenter. Going straight into the top tier. This is one of my favorite albums from the year. The way that I listened to this so many times, I lost count. I just would carry my computer around the apartment listening to it nonstop. It is one of the great pop albums from this year. And I actually got tickets to see Sabrina live for Christmas. So I'm really excited for that because I feel like she's going to be really fun live. Camila Cabello, Familia. I'm going to put this in Vanilla Ice Cream just because I feel like I haven't gone back to it as much as some other albums from the year, but I still do love this album. Yeah, like Hasta los Dientes. Guys, do you remember that? Because I've not gotten over that. Be the Cowboy by Mitski. I'm going to put it in Emotional Blender just because I love half of the album so much. And then there's a few songs at the end that I don't really like. So I'm just conflicted about my feelings on the entire album. Again, not to say it's not a great album. It's just how I feel. Harry's House by Harry Styles. My favorite Harry Styles album. Pang by Caroline Polachek. I'm gonna put it in Vanilla Ice Cream. I do really like it as an album. I think it's a really cool album that definitely deserves more attention. It's similar to Charlie XCX and Mitski. I really have to be in a specific mood for it. Bury Me at Makeout Creek by Mitski is probably my favorite Mitski album, and I'm gonna put it in the second tier. I'm shocked that it is maybe my favorite from her, because it is more of that indie rock sound than Puberty 2 or Be the Cowboy. But I would say as an entire album, like top to bottom, it is my favorite from her that I've heard. Lungs by Florence and the Machine. So this is going to shock some people, but I have not really gone back to this album. I loved it when I first listened to it, when I first reacted to it. However, it just does not have the replay value for me. I think it is because it is such a wandering sound. All of the songs are really long and have this wandering sound to them. And when that's the case, songs don't really have as much replay value for me because I think I lean toward music that is really just easy to pop on. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. You know where you are in the song. It's very predictable. Lungs is not very predictable, and that's not a bad thing at all. I think it's really cool that she makes music that is unpredictable. But when I'm like listening to an album on the daily, sometimes I just want something that's predictable. All for Nothing by Lauv. This is an album that I have gone back to and that I still really like. I just have this thing where I kind of forget it's there sometimes. Like when I was thinking back to all the albums that I listened to this year, I kept forgetting about it, even though I've listened to it many times. It's this conundrum. Like, I love the album. I think it's a great album. But the problem is that it's not as memorable to me as some other albums that have come out. And it pains me to say that because I really loved it the first time I listened to it. In the Zone by Britney Spears. So this is another one that I'm going to put in the third tier. And I know all of you are screaming right now and cussing me out. This is just not my favorite Britney album, y'all. I do really like this album. I just don't love it as much as a lot of Britney fans do. Yeah, I feel like I'm very much in the minority putting it in that category. But for me, it is probably my third to last least favorite Britney album. So it's the way that it is. Love and Fear by Marina. So this is another one that I'm going to put in emotional blender. It feels right to put it in emotional blender because I am conflicted about my views on it. Because on the one hand, it is my least favorite album from Marina, but on the other hand, I enjoy it when I listen to it. So I don't know, I just feel conflicted and that's why I'm putting it there. Fruit by Marina is gonna go into Van Gogh is Quaking. Because I listened to this album a lot and I really love it. It grew on me so much from the first time that I listened to it. I don't think there's even a song that I would skip anymore. So Beyonce by Beyonce. I'm putting this in the second tier because while I think it's a masterpiece, it does not have the replay value that some of her other albums do for me. And I think that's just because some of the songs are really long and really, like, they're masterpieces of songs. And every second of the song is necessary, but I'm not always in the mood for like a 6-minute song that just keeps taking me all these different places. When I listen to songs on repeat, it's usually ones that are very palatable, quick, easy to listen to. The first time I listened to that album, it was such a wild experience and an out-of-body experience that I will never forget. Dangerously in Love by Beyonce is gonna go into Van Gogh is Quaking. Even though I feel like I love 10 of the 15 songs, and there's 5 songs on the album that I don't love. But because I have such a strong love for the 10 songs that I do love, I have to put it there. Again, I told you guys that Beyonce was probably gonna rule the top 2 tiers. And yeah, because as far as Beyonce goes, I think she is one of the most consistently good artists that I've listened to this year. She makes albums so well. Not every artist makes such good albums, but she does. Blackout by Britney Spears. I feel like I'm gonna put it in Van Gogh is Quaking because while I do love this album and I think it's a great pop album, I don't know, I just feel like I didn't listen to it quite as much as Glory. I still love Blackout. I think it's a iconic pop album, but why don't you guys ever talk about the other albums? I Am Sasha Fierce. I have not really gone back to this album as much at all. I feel like I've gone back to it a few times and I do really like it when I listen to it. I'm gonna put it in emotional blender. I like it, but I just have this weird disconnect with it. Kiss by Carly Rae Jepsen. I kind of have to put this in the top tier because I definitely had a whole full-on moment with this album where it felt like it became part of my DNA. I just think it's so fun. It's so catchy. It's so wholesome. It's such a classic bubblegum pop album. The Fame Monster by Lady Gaga. I like this album a lot. I just feel like it's very dark and that's not always the vibe that I'm going for. So I'm gonna put it in Vanilla Ice Cream. This is a throwback, and if you watched this video, shout out to you. Lost and Found by Georgia Smith. So I actually have not gone back to this album. At the time I reacted to it, I really enjoyed it, but I don't know. Every time I tried to go back and listen again, I didn't have the same relationship with it that I did the first time I listened to it. A Star Is Born soundtrack. I'm gonna put it in emotional blender because I did go back and listen to the Lady Gaga Alone tracks a lot, but I don't like the Bradley Cooper ones. And I don't know, for me, like her songs on the album are the standout part. And even then, they don't have like that much longevity in my listening. Femme Fatale by Britney Spears. I'm gonna put this in the second tier. I was debating putting it in the first tier. I feel like it could go in either, honestly. I really love this album. There's definitely a mood that I have to be into for it, which is in the mood for that very robotic electronic sound, and it's just very intense. So I have to be in the mood for it, but 5 Sauce 5 by 5 Seconds of Summer. This was another vinyl that I purchased. I think this album is by far their best work. I think from start to finish, it's a perfect album. It's a 19-song album, which is crazy that I would have no skips on an album that long. And I wish more people would listen to it and talk about it because that album just means a lot to me. It's one of the more emotionally impactful albums that I've heard this year. Sawayama by Rina Sawayama. This will be going in the masterpiece category. Again, it's an album that I really have to be in the right mood to listen to. I didn't end up going back to it as much as I thought I was going to, but when I do go back to it, I think it's just such a solid, cool, interesting project. It's one of those albums that I really respect because I've never heard anything like it. It's such a unique sound. She did that. Britney by Britney Spears. So this might be one of my favorite Britney albums. I don't know. I feel like it's way too soon to tell with Britney's music. I don't know if I can speak to my Britney ranking as set in stone as some of these other rankings, but I love this album. I don't know. I'm going to put it in the top tier, but I feel like it could go either in the top tier or the second tier. There's definitely a few songs on it that I still don't connect to, but overall, I really love how vulnerable she is on the album. I really love the sound of it and just the feel of it. It feels like this very innocent, wholesome, but also empowered music, and I just love that. Born This Way by Lady Gaga. Such an iconic album. When I listen to it, it's such a gourmet experience. It's like dessert. You have to soak it all in. It's not one of those albums that you can just casually listen to, at least not for me. It just takes everything in me when I listen to it. But Judas and Bloody Mary is finally getting famous because of TikTok. So thank you, TikTok, I guess. What's Your Pleasure by Jessie Ware. I haven't gone back to the second half of this album, but I have gone back to some of the songs on the first half of the album, and I absolutely love like the first 5 songs on this album. I will say that after I've like really dug in and listened more, the second half of the album does not have the replay value for me that the other songs do. So for that reason, I'm gonna put it in Emotional Blender because I just feel conflicted. Oops, I Did It Again by Britney Spears. This is also going in Emotional Blender because I love the first half of the album, but I don't love the second half of the album. Pop 2 by Charlie XCX. I really like this album. I just have to be in such a specific mood to listen to it. I have not listened to it in a minute. I'm gonna put it in Vanilla Ice Cream. Yeah, that is my ranking of every album that I listened to this year. So as you can see, it's not just albums from 2022, it's every album that I listened to for the first time in 2022. So that is it. Take a good look. You know, probably hate me for some of my opinions, but they're just my opinions and you can disagree with them. Thank you guys so much for watching and for making this such a special year with reaching 10,000 subscribers and just all the support you've given me. I really, really appreciate it. It keeps me going on the hard days, and yeah, love you guys. Thank you for the support. Please be respectful of me in the comment section. I'm a sensitive little girl. Feel free to like, subscribe, and let me know what your top albums are from this year, because I feel like everyone has different albums that impact them throughout the year. So it would be interesting to get your takes on what your favorite albums were. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.